At 6:42 a.m., the Tulsa Police Department received a routine call from an employee at Las Americas Supermercado. The report was short. "We've got something in the dumpster. I think it's human." Within 20 minutes, two patrol units were on site. The location, Rear Alley, 3rd Street in South Zunas Avenue. The scene, a standard commercial waste bin behind the supermarket's delivery dock, enclosed on three sides by a concrete wall topped with broken glass shards. The smell was immediate, putrid, unmistakable. The responding officers didn't need confirmation. One glance inside the bin was enough. The victim was wrapped in a heavy floor rug, bound with two belts, one leather, one canvas. No clothing, no purse, no shoes, no ID. Body position indicated post-mortem concealment. Skin temperature and lividity confirmed she had been deceased for several hours. Forensics later logged the following. Estimated time of death, between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Apparent cause, ligature strangulation. Secondary trauma, blunt force impact to the right orbital ridge and subdermal bruising across the upper torso. Signs of sexual assault present. No immediate defensive wounds observed. Detectives secured the perimeter and initiated protocol. CSU, crime scene unit, noted drag marks beginning near the alley wall behind the adjoining tire shop, leading 16 feet to the dumpster. The path contained trace amounts of blood and disturbed gravel. A partial footprint, size 11, male, was documented near the wall, imprinted in a shallow patch of oil and dust. No visible tire tracks. No weapon recovered at scene. Surveillance footage was limited. A single wall-mounted camera faced the loading dock, time-stamped in analog overlay. At approximately 3:11 a.m., a faint figure appeared in the lower left frame. No facial features visible. They appeared to pull or carry a heavy object wrapped in dark material. At 3:13 a.m., the figure left the frame, walking northbound. They did not return. By 10 a.m., the victim's body was in the custody of the Tulsa Medical Examiner's office. A pending autopsy was scheduled within 24 hours. No immediate leads. No missing persons report filed. Detectives canvassed the area. Some locals claimed they saw a woman sleeping back there days before. Others said nothing. A few admitted they didn't want to get involved. In the preliminary incident report, the victim was listed only as Jane Doe, female estimated, 40 to 45, Caucasian or mixed ethnicity. It would take another 6 hours before her name was found. The break came when a patrol officer reviewing recent field interviews recalled a woman matching the victim's description from a transient assistance call the previous week. A social worker on 5th and Peoria had taken down her name during a mobile outreach intake. That name was passed to dispatch, then to homicide. Amy Marie Robertson, age 43. Status, unhoused. Last documented residence, none. Known to stay near the 3rd Street corridor. Robertson had no active warrants, no family listed in Tulsa, no recent employment. According to city outreach logs, she'd been approached multiple times by local shelters but declined placement. She was known to keep to herself. Detectives pulled her name through internal systems. A 2003 DUI, a 2009 arrest for trespassing, no violent offenses. Last police contact, 2 weeks prior, after a dispute with a male companion near a convenience store. No charges filed. That companion's name, Gumercindo Jurado. Jurado had been in a relationship with Robertson on and off for several years, according to social workers and police notes. The two were known to argue in public. Witnesses often described him as jealous and hot-tempered. He had 2 prior arrests for disorderly conduct and assault, both misdemeanors. Nothing that stuck. By 5 p.m., Jurado was located on foot 2 blocks from the scene. He was detained for questioning. He denied involvement, claimed he hadn't seen Amy in 2 days. Officers noted abrasions on his left knuckle and dried blood under one fingernail. He said it came from a fight with a man over a cigarette. He consented to a DNA swab. Meanwhile, the autopsy began. Dr. Melissa Klein, assistant medical examiner, performed the examination. In her report, she noted, multiple abrasions consistent with being dragged, extensive bruising to the inner thighs, petechial hemorrhaging in both eyes, classic sign of strangulation, evidence of sexual assault with foreign DNA collected via rape kit. Toxicology results were pending. The CSU processed Amy's belongings retrieved from a nearby encampment, a torn backpack containing expired ID, a flip phone with no SIM card, and a pack of cigarettes. No diary, no letters, no clues. Just a name, now with a body, but still no answers. At this point in the investigation, homicide had a body, a known history of interpersonal conflict, no witnesses, one weak suspect, one unknown DNA profile. It was a murder case, but not yet a solvable one. By the morning after the body was found, Amy Robertson had a name, a case file, and a forensic profile, but she was still a stranger to the investigation. Detectives pulled her records. Her last known address was over a decade old. Her driver's license had expired 5 years prior. No current employment, no medical insurance, no banking data. In the city system, she existed only on paper. Brief encounters logged by shelter workers, minor citations, and police welfare checks. Officers canvassed the neighborhoods surrounding 3rd and Zuni's. The area housed a transient population and several low-income apartment units. A few individuals recognized Amy from photographs. They described her as quiet, wary, and generally alone. She'd been seen most recently near an abandoned tire shop just behind the supermarket. No one had seen her after that. A caseworker from the Tulsa Homeless Outreach Initiative confirmed contact. Amy had declined shelter the week before, citing personal safety concerns. She told staff she preferred open spaces and avoided shared housing environments. When asked about family, she reportedly said, "They don't know where I am. It's better that way." Homicide compiled a list of individuals known to associate with her. Gerardo topped the list, but several others were added, primarily other unhoused individuals who frequented the same corridor. Officers conducted interviews over 48 hours. The stories were fragmented but consistent. Amy kept her distance. She carried an old flip phone without service, kept her belongings in a frayed military backpack, and often moved locations at night. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses was reviewed. A laundromat camera 2 blocks north captured a woman resembling Amy at approximately 10:47 p.m., walking eastbound alone. Clothing matched descriptions from witnesses. She wasn't seen on any other feed after that time. Medical examiner Dr. Melissa Klein completed her autopsy report and submitted it to detectives. Findings included cause of death, ligature strangulation, evidence of manual compression around the trachea and hyoid fracture, recent sexual assault with foreign DNA obtained and logged, multiple abrasions to the legs and back, consistent with being dragged over rough terrain. Time of death revised to between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. No fingerprints were recovered from the belt, rug, or surrounding surfaces. The killer had worn gloves or wiped surfaces clean. Investigators searched local pawn records and Craigslist listings for a rug matching the one used to conceal the body. Nothing came back. The rug was industrial, low pile, and common in apartment units. A forensic chemist identified trace elements on its fibers. Fragments of motor oil, carbon dust, and mold, suggesting it had been stored in a garage or basement. The scene yielded minimal physical evidence beyond the rug and the drag marks. The partial shoe print found near the dumpster had no match in the National Footwear Database. CSU requested further environmental testing, but contamination from foot traffic and garbage disposal limited usefulness. Amy's mobile device was non-functional. No GPS chip, no battery. Investigators located the model's serial number and tracked the last service provider. The account had been deactivated 2 years earlier. With the DNA from the rape kit in evidence, detectives entered it into CODIS. No match was found. The profile was stored and flagged for periodic cross-referencing. A deeper background check on Amy revealed a daughter, age 22, living in Missouri. Contact was attempted through known relatives. Within a day, her daughter, Laura Robertson, returned the call. She had not spoken to her mother in over a year. Laura was cooperative but hesitant. She stated her mother had struggled with addiction and mental health issues throughout her life. She disappeared a lot, Laura said, but this time felt different. I thought she was trying to stay clean. I thought maybe she didn't want me to see her that way. Amy's belongings, such as they were released to Laura for identification. The backpack, torn jacket, and expired license were confirmed. Laura requested to be informed of any developments, but declined to participate in media interviews. Internally, the Tulsa Homicide Unit flagged the case for special review. The profile of the crime, a targeted violent assault on a vulnerable woman with postmortem concealment, suggested the act was premeditated. This was not a spontaneous encounter. Someone had taken deliberate steps to control, move, and hide the body. With no witnesses, no suspect in custody, and no matching DNA, the case began to stall. Detectives issued a public request for information, focusing on anyone who may have seen Amy between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. on the night she died. No new tips came in. Within a week, homicide was forced to shift its resources. Amy Robertson's file remained open but inactive, pending forensic developments. She was no longer a Jane Doe, but she had no voice, and at that stage, no justice. By the third day of the investigation, detectives focused on reconstructing the final movements of Amy Robertson. The timeline remained incomplete. The goal was to close the gap between 10:47 p.m., the last confirmed sighting, and 3:11 a.m., when a figure appeared on surveillance dragging a concealed object into the alley. The last confirmed image came from a security camera mounted outside a laundromat on South Zunis Avenue. Amy was seen walking alone, eastbound, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, carrying a backpack over one shoulder. She appeared stable, alert. No one followed her. The footage ended there. Nothing in adjacent cameras showed her continuing past the next intersection. Detectives retrieved time-stamped footage from 5 surrounding businesses. All cameras were analog, with low-light capture. Several were non-functional. One feed from a liquor store showed heavy static, but recorded what may have been the same backpack at 11:14 p.m., slung over someone's shoulder in the opposite direction. Resolution was too low to confirm identity. Witness canvassing began again. A man living in an upstairs unit near the alley behind the supermarket claimed to hear arguing around midnight. He didn't look out the window, claimed it wasn't his business. He heard a woman's voice yell once, then silence. He went back to sleep. 3 blocks south, a gas station clerk remembered seeing a man come in around 12:30 a.m. to buy beer and bandages. The man's knuckles were bleeding. He used cash. The clerk described him as late 30s, dark hoodie, slight limp. No cameras inside the gas station. Police cross-checked the clerk's shift log and verified the sale. Meanwhile, detectives re-interviewed Gumercindo Jurado. He remained cooperative but evasive on details. He claimed to be drinking alone behind a recycling center near 11th and Peoria. He denied seeing Amy that night, despite their documented argument days prior. His alibi was uncorroborated. Jurado's hands showed signs of superficial healing wounds. He claimed they were from broken glass. Officers noted inconsistencies in his account. He denied touching Amy. He agreed to a full interview and submitted to a polygraph, which was inconclusive. A rape kit from the victim yielded a male DNA profile, but preliminary analysis excluded Jurado. His sample did not match. He was not ruled out entirely, but the focus shifted. The autopsy timeline helped narrow the death window. Dr. Klein confirmed time of death between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. due to rigor onset, core body temperature, and gastric contents. Amy's stomach contained trace amounts of processed meat and corn chips, suggesting a last meal likely consumed 2 to 4 hours before death. A transient witness named R.T. Harris, known in the area, came forward days later. He said he saw Amy around midnight near the tire shop. She was talking to some guy, described as white, mid-40s, facial stubble, and wearing jeans and a gray jacket. Harris couldn't recall more, claimed he didn't stick around. He left when he saw them arguing. CSU returned to the tire shop in nearby alleys. Under a rusted metal overhang, they located faint blood traces, too degraded for full analysis but present. A used cigarette butt with partial saliva DNA was found less than 2 feet from the spot. Sample was logged. The rug in which Amy's body was wrapped was analyzed in detail. Fibers matched common commercial floor coverings used in multifamily rental units. It carried particles of rubber dust and insulation fibers, along with traces of feline dander, indicating it had been stored in an enclosed residential or utility space before use. Detectives distributed flyers to nearby landlords and property managers, asking about any missing or discarded rugs. No one reported a match. Data from crime scene notes and forensic reports was cross-checked for pattern alignment with previous unsolved homicides in Tulsa County. None fit the same timeline or method, but internally the team flagged the case as high-risk target with organized disposal, a profile often associated with repeat offenders. Despite exhaustive rechecks, Amy's movements after 11 p.m. could not be fully accounted for. No friend reported seeing her after that. The area had no active digital surveillance. Her phone remained non-functional and disconnected from any tower in the city. At this stage, the following facts were logged in sequence. 10:47 p.m. Amy walks east on Zunis Avenue, 12 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. Witnesses report hearing yelling, and a man buys bandages with bloody hands. 1 to 3 a.m. Estimated time of death. 3:11 a.m. Surveillance captures a figure moving what appears to be a body-wrapped object into the alley dumpster. The gaps in surveillance and lack of direct eyewitness identification left law enforcement with insufficient probable cause for an arrest. The DNA sample collected from the victim was entered into CODIS and flagged for immediate notification if a match occurred. With no suspect in custody and no actionable leads, the case was again placed in an active pending status. Detectives continued working the case quietly, monitoring for any similar patterns or repeat offenses in the region. No further witness statements came forward. The city moved on. The file stayed open. But so did the silence. By the end of the first operational week, Gumercindo Jurado remained the central focus of the Tulsa Homicide Unit. Not because evidence proved he was the killer, but because no other viable suspect had surfaced. Jurado had a history with Amy Robertson, a pattern of volatility, and no verifiable alibi. In absence of direct proof, circumstantial indicators held weight. Detectives pulled Jurado's arrest history again. 2 public disturbance charges, 1 arrest for assault after allegedly pushing a woman during a street altercation, dismissed for lack of prosecution. He had never served time. He was known to law enforcement, but not prioritized. On the night of Amy's murder, he claimed he was alone, drinking behind a recycling center. No witnesses, no surveillance. Officers requested transaction records from nearby businesses. No purchases tied to his name. No security footage placing him elsewhere during the crucial hours. The wounds on his hands, noted during the initial interview, were photographed and compared to common injury patterns in strangulation cases. The knuckle abrasions did not match typical pressure-related bruising associated with manual force. The medical examiner confirmed the wounds were superficial and inconsistent with the use of force that caused Amy's death. Jurado underwent polygraph testing. The examiner flagged 2 responses as inconclusive, not deceptive. Homicide acknowledged polygraph results were inadmissible in court, but documented them for internal use. Jurado was released after questioning. Tulsa PD issued a follow-up bulletin to state agencies regarding Amy's case, requesting any known associates or recent interactions involving both Jurado and the victim. No new leads returned. Simultaneously, the DNA profile recovered from the rape kit remained unmatched in CODIS. No links to any convicted offender, past or current inmate, or registered arrestee within the state system. Analysts at the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation confirmed the sample was viable and clean. Male origin, single source, consistent with sexual assault. Detectives explored the possibility of consensual contact prior to death. No known romantic partners beyond Jurado were identified. Amy's transient status and avoidance of social shelters meant she had limited digital or medical records. No other men were confirmed to have recent proximity to her. They re-examined the rug. Fibers embedded in the weave included red polyester strands, consistent with a particular type of indoor-outdoor carpeting manufactured for apartment breezeways and common corridors. Property records showed that 4 apartment buildings within a 3-block radius used similar rugs in renovations within the last 2 years. Detectives requested access to the discarded materials from each site. None retained records of prior rug removals or resident complaints about theft. A canvas belt used to secure the body was traced to a surplus supply store on 11th Street. The owner stated that belts of that type were sold in bulk, cash only, no identifying tags or unique features. No record of sale. Despite efforts to connect Jurado to these materials, nothing substantial was found. He denied owning such belts. A search of his belongings yielded no matches. With all primary leads exhausted, the case was elevated internally to open critical. That status meant regular review, but no active task force would remain assigned unless new evidence surfaced. Behind the scenes, detectives grew divided. Some maintained belief in Jurado's involvement, citing opportunity and motive. Others noted the lack of any forensic or digital trace. No fingerprints, no matching DNA, no physical link to the rug, the belts, or the scene. Detective Liz Egan filed an internal memo recommending that investigators step back and expand the suspect pool beyond known associates. She cited statistics from similar homicide cases involving unhoused women. In 68% of solved cases, the perpetrator was not known to the victim prior to the assault. She also noted a disturbing rise in opportunistic attacks targeting vulnerable individuals in the surrounding county. Publicly, the case went quiet. Media coverage had faded. No further press conferences were scheduled. Amy's name no longer appeared in daily crime logs or regional headlines. Privately, her daughter Laura requested case updates, but declined further involvement. She told detectives she had no contact with Jurado and preferred to focus on closing out her mother's affairs. Forensic labs reprocessed the DNA for touch evidence on the rug and belts. No new profiles emerged. 3 weeks passed, then 4. By the time the 5th week closed, Amy Robertson's case was unofficially categorized as cold. It remained unsolved, with one known suspect officially uncharged and one unknown assailant. No face, no name, just a clean DNA strand sealed inside a lab freezer. Until something changed, there was nothing more to move. By the start of the 6th week, the Amy Robertson homicide case was reclassified internally as open unsolved, with minimal active resources assigned. No additional leads, no CODIS match, no new witnesses. The DNA profile remained unlinked. All physical evidence had been processed. Nothing further could be extracted. Detective Liz Egan continued to monitor the case voluntarily. She documented supplemental notes as lab results trickled in. A secondary trace from the rug's backing revealed degraded skin cell fragments, but the concentration was too low to yield a viable profile. The belt fibers offered no additional insights. Digital forensic efforts yielded no results. Amy's flip phone lacked a SIM card, had been inactive for over 2 years, and showed no recent GPS location data when connected to diagnostic tools. No voicemail, no message history. The department had moved on to newer cases. The Tulsa County District Attorney's Office marked the file inactive pending substantial evidentiary development. Without a named suspect, probable cause, or forensic match, prosecutors could not justify moving forward. Internally, the case became one of dozens suspended under similar conditions. Unsolved homicides with no primary suspect and no usable leads. Outside law enforcement, the story was no longer in public rotation. Local media had run one follow-up article, summarizing the situation as still under investigation. No major coverage followed. Amy's name did not trend. No reward had been offered. The community's attention had shifted. Laura Robertson, Amy's daughter, followed up by email once every 2 weeks. She received short replies confirming that the file was open but unchanged. She asked if she could retrieve her mother's personal effects. She was informed they had already been released. She asked again whether anyone had been arrested. The answer remained no. In one email, she asked if the department had checked into any other attacks around Tulsa lately. No connection was made at the time. Her inquiry was documented in the case file. In early October, a separate rape case surfaced involving an unhoused woman assaulted behind an abandoned warehouse on Archer Street. The woman survived. Her description of the assailant was vague: male, white, 40s, short hair, no distinguishing features. She was able to fight him off after he was startled by movement in the alley. She declined further cooperation and refused to testify. Her rape kit was collected, processed, and submitted to CODIS, no match. Detective Egan flagged the case and requested to review it alongside Amy's. The method of attack, victim profile, and general location had similarities. Both cases involved women living on the street, late-night assaults, and attempted concealment. In Amy's case, concealment succeeded. In the new one, it failed. The file was updated, but again, no DNA match emerged. No overlapping evidence could tie the two together with certainty. Out of procedural necessity, Egan compiled a 3-month status report. It included total hours logged, 186 witnesses interviewed, 14 DNA samples collected, 3 confirmed suspect leads, 0 forensic profiles entered into national databases, 2 public tips received. The findings were archived. The case was closed for the quarter. In November, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation circulated an internal memo on the rising number of unsolved attacks involving women without stable housing. Tulsa ranked in the top 3 counties for such incidents. No task force had been established. At the request of Egan, the DNA profile from Amy's case was set for monthly auto-check against newly logged offender entries into CODIS. No match had been found by the end of the year. Amy's name appeared only once more in official communication that month, when her death certificate was finalized and mailed to her daughter. It listed cause of death as homicide by ligature strangulation. Manner of death, pending further investigative result. That designation had no practical use. It served only to close the last official document tied to her life. By winter, the case was functionally dormant. The notification arrived by secure email on February 12th, 9.5 months after Amy Robertson's murder. The subject line was brief. CODIS hit, homicide victim Amy Robertson. The DNA profile collected from the rape kit, previously unmatched, now registered a confirmed hit in the combined DNA index system. The match linked to a newly entered offender sample processed following a recent sexual assault conviction in Oklahoma County. The name returned was Dennis John Kurtz, Jr., white male, date of birth 1977, current inmate housed at Joseph Harp Correctional Center. He had been sentenced 3 months earlier for the violent rape of a 32-year-old unhoused woman behind a shuttered pawn shop in Oklahoma City. That case had gone to trial quickly, thanks to a strong chain of evidence and victim cooperation. As required, the Tulsa PD was notified. The assigned detective, Liz Egan, immediately reactivated the dormant Robertson case. She pulled Kurtz's file. He had no prior connection to Amy, no overlapping address history, and no ties to Tulsa that were evident in his background. Kurtz's rap sheet, however, showed escalating violence. He had prior arrests in multiple counties for drug possession, burglary, and unlawful restraint. Several charges had been pled down or dismissed. He had no prior homicide charges. No previous DNA on file until his most recent conviction. A formal request was submitted to the Oklahoma Department of Corrections for a custodial interview. Approval was granted. Egan, accompanied by an OSBI forensic analyst, drove to Joseph Harp the following week. The interview was recorded and monitored. Kurtz waived legal representation and consented to questioning. When presented with the evidence, specifically the DNA match from the sexual assault kit, he did not deny physical contact but claimed not to know the name Amy Robertson. He stated he had been in Tulsa a few times, but could not recall the exact dates. He admitted to meeting people downtown and using now and then. When pressed, he offered no timeline, no location, no explanation for how his DNA came to be on the body of a murdered woman dumped behind a supermarket. He denied killing anyone. His statements were inconsistent. When shown photographs from the case file, he paused but made no specific admissions. His tone remained flat, uncooperative, but not overtly defiant. At the conclusion of the interview, the prison staff were instructed to preserve any personal items in Kurtz's cell for evidence review. Egan returned to Tulsa and prepared an arrest affidavit for first-degree murder and first-degree rape. The case was presented to the Tulsa County District Attorney's Office, which approved charges based on the DNA match, victim pathology, and similarities in assault method between the 2 cases. Court records from the Oklahoma City conviction were cross-referenced. In both incidents, the victims were women experiencing homelessness. Assaults occurred in the secluded commercial areas. Both women were overpowered at night. The attacker left minimal physical evidence beyond DNA. In Amy's case, the disposal method showed elevated planning, body wrapped, dragged, and concealed. Based on these parallels, prosecutors moved to consolidate both cases in pretrial filings to establish behavioral consistency. Search warrants were executed on Kurtz's former residence and vehicle. Carpet fibers recovered from the passenger seat showed a chemical match to the rug used to wrap Amy's body. The presence of identical mold spores and insulation particles further linked the material to storage conditions consistent with Kurtz's prior address, a garage unit with limited airflow and damp insulation near the foundation. A neighbor who lived in the adjacent duplex unit reported seeing Kurtz haul what she described as a heavy rolled-up rug into the back of his car 2 days before Amy's body was found. She had not reported the sighting at the time, saying she didn't think much of it until shown images from the case file during a follow-up interview. Kurtz's movements were reconstructed using toll records and a partially recovered GPS history from a burner phone associated with his known aliases. One ping placed him in Tulsa, within a 3-mile radius of the crime scene on the night of the murder. Though not admissible alone, it added to the circumstantial profile. Tulsa PD held a joint press conference with the district attorney's office on March 5th. The case was announced as formally charged and moving toward prosecution. Kurtz would be transported under heavy security for arraignment. Amy's daughter was notified. She was provided a private briefing, declined interviews, and requested the legal process continue without her public involvement. At the time of formal indictment, Dennis Kurtz became the sole suspect in the Robertson case. It marked Tulsa's first cold case resolved by a retroactive CODIS hit that year. The case file was reclassified as active prosecution. Following the indictment of Dennis Kurtz, Tulsa Homicide transferred all relevant materials to the district attorney's office. The goal shifted from identification to prosecution. Before the trial, Detective Liz Egan submitted a formal behavioral analysis request to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. The profile was assigned to a forensic psychologist with experience in repeat violent offenders. Kurtz's criminal history, while not previously flagged as serial, revealed escalating patterns: petty theft, unlawful restraint, breaking and entering, 2 prior arrests for assault, and now 2 confirmed violent sexual assaults, one of which resulted in homicide. The psychological profile outlines several key markers. Victim selection. All victims were transient women, over 30, with limited family or community connection. This reduced the likelihood of rapid police intervention. Time and location. Attacks occurred in isolated urban pockets between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., in areas where street visibility was low and surveillance was scarce. Method: blitz-style assaults involving overpowering force. In the case of Amy Robertson, post-mortem staging suggested not only intent to kill, but deliberate concealment. Control dynamics. The use of binding objects, belts, rugs, improvised restraints, indicated a need for dominance beyond the physical act. This was not opportunistic, it reflected methodical behavior. Lack of remorse. In recorded interviews, Kurtz never expressed confusion, panic, or remorse. He offered minimal verbal resistance but no helpful admissions. This is consistent with high-functioning antisocial personality types. Separately, detectives reviewed cold cases within the last 5 years involving similar victim profiles. 1 unsolved homicide in Muskogee County and 2 sexual assaults in Creek County were flagged. While DNA had not yet linked them to Kurtz, procedural overlap was clear. The district attorney declined to include those incidents in the current proceedings, citing insufficient forensic connection. The court phase began in late spring. The prosecution opened with a timeline. Amy Robertson's body found, evidence preserved, DNA matched, and behavioral consistency across Kurtz's prior acts. Photographs from the crime scene were introduced in court, along with a 3D rendered model showing the drag path and concealment method. Dr. Melissa Klein testified to the cause of death, ligature strangulation, and confirmed signs of recent sexual assault. When questioned, she detailed the bruising, the hyoid fracture, and the absence of defensive wounds. The DNA analyst from OSBI took the stand next, walking the jury through CODIS, match probability, and chain of custody integrity. The statistical probability of a coincidental match was less than 1 in 1.2 billion. The defense strategy was passive. Kurtz pled not guilty but offered no alternative narrative. His court-appointed attorney argued the state lacked a motive and that no one witnessed the murder. He admitted Kurtz's DNA was present, but claimed the encounter could have been consensual. The prosecution countered with the Oklahoma City case. Although the assault survivor had refused to testify, The conviction and physical evidence were admissible. Carpet fibers from Kurtz's vehicle, matched with the rug used to wrap Amy, were introduced as corroborative evidence. The neighbor's eyewitness statement added further weight. Throughout the proceedings, Kurtz sat silent. He neither addressed the court nor reacted visibly to testimony. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. He was found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder and first-degree rape. Sentencing was held 2 weeks later. The court handed down life without the possibility of parole. Amy Robertson's daughter did not attend the trial. She was notified by the victim liaison the same day the verdict was read. Kurtz was returned to state custody and classified as a Level 4 violent offender under Oklahoma Department of Corrections guidelines. He would remain in maximum security confinement indefinitely. The case was formally closed in Tulsa County. Internal files were sealed for archival. After the conviction of Dennis Kurtz, the case of Amy Robertson was formally closed. But unlike high-profile trials, it faded without headlines. There were no national broadcasts, no documentaries, no panel discussions. It concluded in silence, much like how it began. Local news mentioned the verdict briefly. One column in the Tulsa World ran a half-page summary under the crime section. No editorials followed. No public outcry surfaced over why a vulnerable woman's case had remained unsolved for nearly a year, despite clear forensic evidence. In official terms, justice was served. But outside court records, the story remained largely unnoticed. The broader impact of Amy's case surfaced slowly. Internal memos circulated within Tulsa PD outlining failures in early coordination. A departmental review noted that the initial delay in evidence processing, combined with a lack of prioritization, was procedurally compliant but strategically flawed. That was a formal way of acknowledging that if Amy had not been homeless, the response might have been faster, louder, more visible. The Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation later reported a statistical uptick in violent crimes against unhoused women statewide. Between 2016 and 2019, more than a dozen cases involving sexual assaults against women without permanent residence remained unsolved. Amy's case became an internal reference point in policy training, highlighting the risks of treating certain victims as low priority based on socioeconomic status. In response, Tulsa PD implemented an internal policy update. All unidentified female homicide victims would receive immediate escalation to major case units, regardless of housing status. The department also established a liaison position to interface directly with local shelters and outreach teams to improve real-time communication on vulnerable individuals. Amy's name appeared once more, this time engraved on a memorial plaque erected behind a transitional shelter in North Tulsa. The shelter staff had worked with her briefly, years before her death. A social worker who remembered her described her as guarded but polite. She didn't want to stay, said she wasn't ready to be around people yet. Amy's daughter, Laura, declined to speak at the dedication, but she provided a short statement to be read aloud. "I hope my mother's story is remembered not for how it ended, but for how long it was ignored." Her words were quoted in a local law enforcement training manual published the following year. Legally, the case helped push for a state-level review of DNA backlog protocols. Amy's delayed match was cited in a legislative report discussing the need for faster data processing across counties. It became one of several examples used to justify modernization of forensic workflows and mandate quarterly audits of cold case files. For all institutional measures taken afterward, none changed the fact that Amy Robertson died in an alley, her body discarded behind a market. That reality stayed fixed. What changed was how departments handled the next Amy, the one still alive. In the end, Amy left no estate, no published record, and no enduring news story. But her case quietly altered how some agencies viewed the intersection of vulnerability and violence. Her file now sits in an evidence room stamped "Solved," but within it remains a timeline of decisions, some too slow, some overlooked, some avoidable. Those aren't just part of her case, they're part of her legacy. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe, follow us, and leave a comment. It truly helps us keep bringing you gripping and thought-provoking true crime stories.